Hello again. As it turns out, last week, or not last week, but the week before, I did a podcast episode called The Cost of Lies. And as it turns out, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of lying. I went on Instagram today and I said that the next episode of Tuesday Night Fiction would not come out until next week, July 2nd. Well, I thought for about 30 minutes about it, and I decided why be lazy? Why not just do the episode today because it's Tuesday and I'm the host of Tuesday Night Fiction. So what am I doing if I'm not coming out with the episode on Tuesday? So with that being said, welcome. I'm Nicholas Austin. Welcome back to Tuesday Night Fiction. Tonight we are going to be discussing Chapter 7, What Was Once Whole, of the book Crimson River. We're going to be talking a lot about the chapter tonight. It's one of my favorites, as I mentioned during the episode last week. But also, because we are going to be talking a lot about the chapter during the episode, I want to start off with some extra things, some side notes. So, for some side notes, I'm going to talk about what's going on with Book 4. So, Book 4, Cryptic Kingdom, has been delayed so many times. The timeline has been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. It isn't because of, it's partly because of me. So at first it was because of me. So I think last year I was planning on releasing it sometime in December. Maybe even, I think the earliest time I said was October. That ended up getting pushed back to December. Probably, I think at the time, just out of trying to be conservative and not over-predict. Look how that turned out. My predictions for when my books are going to be released has been awful at best, but luckily I don't think that they should suffer. So I need to put in the work and get it done and make sure everything comes together the way it should. We're going to be talking about that today. But yeah, so like I said, at first I predicted October, then I moved on to December, and then in December my editor let me know that her pregnancy was going to be pushing my timeline back. She was pregnant, she had a baby, which is awesome. Congratulations to my editor, just in case she ever listens to this. Giving birth is probably the coolest thing that anybody can ever do. Awesome. Bravo. Congratulations. But that pushed the timeline back. And then when the timeline got pushed back, I probably predicted at least 4 different dates. And then I said it was going to be June, and now it's June. And then so she got pregnant, so once I finish with my editor, then I move on to my cover and interior guy. And we were supposed to start within the last few days, and literally like a day or two after we were supposed to start, he says he broke his wrist. So, literally the only bone in the body, I guess, besides the fingers maybe, that he would need to work on on the computer to get my cover stuff and my art stuff done, it gets broken within 2 days. So my thought process on it, and as I posted on Instagram, is that God just, he knows that the people aren't ready yet for this masterpiece. He knows that it's gonna take some time for people to grow, to get some strength back. People are still really sad about Game of Thrones, and he wants to really let that sadness sink in so that once it is time, the book will come out and it will just bring the right amount of joy. It'll give people hope again. But in order to be brought to that point, you kind of need to be down in the dumps for a while first. And you need to want it, You need to thirst for it. The more you thirst for it, the more satisfied you'll be when it comes out and you realize that this book is just unbelievable. Because it is. It's just, I'm 8 chapters in of finalizing it. So 8 chapters technically are like done. And I have a call with my editor tomorrow, and we're going to be going over just very last minor notes, Cryptic Kingdom is going to be done tomorrow. That's crazy. I mean, even though it's taken so long, I still am just, I can't believe it. I can't believe the fourth book I've written is written. It's just very strange. Yeah, I've written 4 books and I'm going to be starting the 5th. Right now, I think that book is going to be called Crevice Colossus. Um, I'm sticking with the CRs. I've gone the whole way. I have to finish it. And that book is also going to be just a masterpiece. And again, talking back about talking back about the Game of Thrones, like we discussed previously. I mean, I'm reading through book 4 and finishing the editing, and I'm just like, things come so full circle. It's it'll make you happy. It won't be Bran. Bran's if there is a Bran in the story, his story will be complete. You'll know why everything's happening. You'll know why Melisandre can drink wine, poison wine, and just not die for some reason. It'll all make sense. Everything will make sense. And it will be so satisfying. So, without further humbleness, because I've been very humble so far this episode, I will say that I'm doing my best. Hopefully my cover guy recovers fast. Mark, recover fast, please. And I think the cover is going to be awesome. I think we're going with a blue title design right now. Same like shade hue, color, whatever. Same kind of darkness of the font. I guess it's going to be like matte or whatever. And keeping along the same trends. It's really cool, again, going back to the fact that we're 4 books in, to see like all the books come together. It was one thing when you had 1 book cover, but then once you have 4 that stay on brand with the names that stay on brand, and in my opinion, the idea for this one should be pretty cool. So for the cover, what's on the cover. So yeah, it's gonna be a good one. And like I said, I think his break is gonna delay the book like a week, or at least not the book, but like the process of putting it together. When I came up with my most recent prediction of July 23rd, which I mean is it's definitely going to come out July 23rd. Um, Fingers crossed. When I came out with that, that was actually before he even broke his wrist, and I did it that far back because specifically it was going to be on a discussion episode of the podcast. So, and I kind of pushed it far back because what I was planning to do was I was hoping that this whole process would be done by July 4th, since we still have like 2 weeks left until that, or something around that seems about right, maybe less than 2 weeks. And I originally thought that that the editing, that the cover and interior process was going to be done by then. I thought I would be able to upload all the files by then, and honestly have some books ready that weekend and do my giveaway that weekend. Now that we're delayed a week, it's looking probably more like the 17th-ish when I'll have books ready. So people who are entered in the giveaway, like I said, I'm doing a giveaway. I said at the end of, I think, 2 episodes ago, I'm giving away 40 books. 40 books. 10 times 4, 40 books. 10 people are going to win books 1 through 4 in the series. Free copies, books 1 through 4. And it's going to be an Instagram only giveaway. I'm going to do one of those neat little things that people seem to do a lot now, where they make you like tag somebody in their comments, and that's pretty much the only thing you need to do to enter. If you'd like to share, that's always nice. I really hope that anybody who wins a book will review any or all books in the series, whichever ones you like the most. 5-star reviews only. Unless you don't like it, then give it less than that. It's whatever, really. The books are fantastic, so I don't need your fucking feedback. But no, I'm just kidding. 5-star reviews, 4-star reviews, 3-star reviews. If you like the books, just review them. Any feedback is always appreciated. And I'm just excited to get those books in people's hands. Honestly, it's been a very extremely busy past couple months, and I'm sorry it's been held up, but it will be worth it, especially for books 1 to 3 also. So one thing I wanted to talk about that I think also briefly touched on 2 episodes ago, is that I went back through books 1 and 2 so far. I'm going to do 3 also, but hopefully 3 has less of this. But books 1 and 2, I went back and I polished up a bunch of things. And today we're going to be talking about figuring it out. And based on figuring it out, based around that idea of figuring it out, we're going to be talking about the fact that, like I said, I went back with books 1 and 2. I noticed that there were issues in there that I honestly didn't think there were. I didn't think there were line issues or text issues or anything like that. And I didn't go back and edit any content. There's no content changes. The whole book it plays out the same. The discussions are the same. Everything's the same. And I've talked in previous weeks about how seeing your writing improve over time and seeing what you're doing, what you're working on improve over time and how good it is to see that. And the only way that you can get there is if you keep doing it like for years and just keep going and don't ever stop and just keep releasing it. I honestly think that releasing it is still a good idea, even if you didn't know at the time things you knew later, because the seeds will be recognized. The seeds of your ability will be recognized if you recognize your own ability. So if you recognize that you're telling a story that you find is interesting, or that you're making music that you think is interesting, or you're painting something that you think is interesting looking, then people will like it. People will like it. And the technical stuff, you'll get better. You'll get better as you go. And you can always go back and fix certain things. But if you don't do it, or if you do it once and then give up because you're not getting the attention you want, then you're never going to get to the point of being a master, ever. And that's why I highly recommend playing the long game, because figuring it out will only happen when you play the long game. And it's pretty cool to see that now. Because honestly, with this 4th book, it's like I've gone through it. My attention to detail, because of this series alone, has improved immensely. Like in the past, my attention to detail with certain things has not been good. If when it comes to specifically, when it comes to like mundane things, right? So when it comes to the plot, I'm pretty sure I have a pretty solid plot, and there's little to no plot holes. If you point something out, I guarantee I'll be able to explain it to you. I guarantee it. So when it comes to tying things together, like that's one of my strengths, is coming up with, is being able to say A plus B equals C. Because with movies, I'm a plot Nazi at this point. I mean, I can't watch a movie and not criticize it for certain things. Like with one example is one movie I went and saw a week or 2 ago, which was Rocket Man, which is like the least A plus B equals C movie there is. It makes no sense at all. Like in Bohemian Rhapsody, you had Freddie Mercury being inspired to write a song by something that was happening, but in Rocket Man, he's not the writer of the songs, and yet any of the scenes where he starts singing one is based on what's happening around him. But he didn't write it, so why would the scene around him inspire the words to the song? He wasn't inspired to do it. The other guy was, the guy who wrote the songs for him. Anyway, my point is that, and you can tell because naturally I talk about these things a lot. I talk about films and TV shows a lot and critique them. A plus B has to equal C for me, but the way that I write it down doesn't matter as much sometimes in my head. It should. It's not a good thing. I'm learning it to make it a better thing. But if I write A divided by instead of plus when I'm doing a math equation that's 40 pages long and do that a couple times, I mean, sometimes I don't catch it because I rush, and that's a mistake, and don't do that. But everybody has something else, one thing or the other thing that they're good at. And if you're not good at the one thing, you might catch it later. If you're not good at the A plus B thing, if you're not good at seeing the A plus B thing, like I think is one of my strengths, then later you'll catch it. but you can't catch it unless you keep doing it. And I mean doing it for years, not waiting for the attention to come, because the attention will not come unless you put in time for years. I mean, let's think about this for a second. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I watch a lot of TV shows. I consume a lot of media in general, and my time is very valuable. I mean, like, I am always working on something all the time, but I also like to and need to consume media. So if I see someone who starts to make, if I let's come out with a professional example, I guess, right? A TV show that gets canceled after the second season. Am I going to even start watching that TV show? Absolutely not. Because why would I? It got canceled. The people making it clearly didn't either care enough or have the resources to make it great. So why would I spend my time on it? And it's not just about the accolades that something receives, but it's at least, at a minimum, about the time put in. Because if you think I am really good, I'm going to be a musician or whatever, I think I could do this, I'm going to go, and you do that, but you record like 3 songs and then you don't get 10,000 likes on Instagram, and then you stop because you're like, people just don't care about me. People, my friends don't even care about me. Like, and that happens a lot. It's an easy thing to think. I've thought it before, with music in particular. I've thought it. And you have to fight that. You have to. You have to fight it, and you have to keep going, and you have to never, ever stop. If there's something you like doing, you have to do it all the time and never stop. For years. I mean, years. And not because of what I'm saying, not because like that's the only way to get success, but just find the things that you don't mind doing for that long and do them. Because you will get better and you will fail. You will do things wrong. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I did. I mean, I had things in book 1 and 2 where I was like, what the fuck? I could have swore that on a line level this was like immaculate, and it wasn't. So what I did this week and last week was I went back and I read word for word, every single word, one at a time, until I made sure that every sentence made sense. And now it does, and I'm re-releasing them, and to the people who have already read them, I'm sending new copies. If you ask me for a new copy, I'll send it to you for free, because I'm sorry and I'm learning and I'm always getting better, always, all the time, and I won't stop. I won't stop making the best books that I can so that you can enjoy them and have the best reading experience possible, because I love you. I want your time with my books to be some of the best times you've had with a book. I'm not going to say of your life, even though they will be, but I'm not going to say that. Anyway, so that's the first step, again, in figuring it out. And there's some of that in our chapter today. And it's not exactly titled like that. It was titled What Once Was Whole. Because a lot, especially with Laterra and the Vahani going south, a lot was once whole that is no longer whole. But also for Hansa, also for Jeannie. Their family was once whole. The councilmen were once whole. And we see that with Castor in this chapter. So let's get into the chapter itself and talk about what we experienced. Because, again, this chapter, when it comes to figuring it out, is where I think I first started to kind of get it, to get what writing was about. And it's not where I am now. It was just the next step. This chapter is where I think I took the next step. And it's not the most action-packed chapter. It's kind of dramatic. There's kind of a lot of talking, but that talking is one of the things I learned. So let's get into that. So part 1 is kind of a introduction to where Jeannie, Hansa, and Harrison and Dominic are going now. So they're going north to the mountain lands. They have to cross a river. They have to cross a bridge. And Jeannie is noticing that it's kind of like a moment of peace. It's the first moment of peace they've really had The current is flowing smooth over the rocks. It's not crashing down upon the rocks, but she has the feeling it will crash down again. And it's safe to say, being that, I mean, the whole rest of the story is pretty, the current has crashed down upon her quite a bit in the story. So that's, first of all, a metaphor. Pretty cool, I think. I think I was learning. So I get some credit for that. I'll take credit for that one. And then, okay, so that's the first section, the shortest one. And again, it just really sets the stage kind of on a couple different things, but really for the journey north. Then we move on to part two. So part two has a couple different layers to it. Okay, so Laterra is traveling south, and she and her people have been attacked by the Keegans. Walter Keegan has been taken, and things are starting to look bleak. Rations are starting to run low. Things are not going well for the first time. Because once she found out that from Hansa that Hansa, well, first of all, that Hansa's alive, and second of all, that the councilman betrayed her father, she's got to just kind of deal with it. She can't really do much about it. There's no time to seek justice, and they really just need to make it to the hold. She doesn't have time to divert for her own selfish vengeance of taking these guys down. Not yet. So she's dealing with that, and eventually the people come upon a camp. As we saw in one of the previous chapters, when Malik and Adila requested, when they were talking with Pharaoh at the hold, the Tokali hold, they were talking about bringing some of the Tokali back and away from their camps so that the Bahani could resupply. They find one of these camps, and they find some food. And everybody's kind of in a mad dash. And with the birds that were sent down from the Great Fortress, not many people are looking too favorably upon the councilman right now. And they don't know, the rest of the Bahani don't know yet about the betrayal. But they do know that the councilman didn't listen or didn't follow the orders of the Great Fortress and come north first to have the discussion. So they're upset. And the councilmen are kind of losing control. But they're not just losing control of their people, they're losing control of themselves. And so I want to talk about the miserable life of liars. In terms of the councilmen, we see really for the first time that one, they have to stand up for each other. They have to really defend each other because they have no one else. And their betrayal leads them to be alone at a time when they need to least be alone, when things are getting hard. And this is what happens when you lie, like I did tonight about the fact that I wasn't going to be publishing this episode. But that's a good lie, because I made up for it. I gave you great content instead of not giving you great content and making you wait a week. But if I kept lying like that, if I did this every week, you'd start to feel betrayed by me. And you wouldn't listen to me when I said, hey guys, let's slow down and not eat all the food. So I'll tell you what, eat all the food you want. But the councilmen will not get to. And they kind of see when they're talking with Castor that the lies are catching up. Castor is starting to feel extremely guilty. He goes into a story about his time in the mountain lands and what he realized were lessons unlearned from his father when he was younger. And he gets to this point again, where those things that he thought he knew and those lessons from times of old, he just forgot. He just didn't care. He cast them aside for his own greed and for what he thought would be the better path, which was against that of one of his best friends. And so he's a man without a face, as Laterra thinks. He's a hollow shell. That's where all lies lead, really. They lead you to become a hollow shell. And one that won't know how to cope with anything. And so Castor can't eat, he can't think, he can't communicate right. And the only moment where he really shows any emotion is when he does start to kind of try to at least try and confront what he did. Because you can tell up until this point it's just been suppressed. It's just been suppressed. He hasn't admitted to himself. He hasn't admitted to anyone. And he's not okay with it because no one would be. And the longer you wait, the more of yourself you lose. And that's what Castor has done. And that is the miserable life of liars. So that's why when you get lied to, just know that those people that do that are just, they're miserable. Which is what you should want from a liar, is for them to be miserable and to not enjoy the delicious food of this world. Moving on to another liar, we have Elon. So Latera connects with Elon at the camp as well. Well, she doesn't really connect with him, but she tries. And their relationship is kind of going a little bit downhill. So she finds him in a tent scrounging for food, and he admits to her that this kind of journey didn't go exactly how he thought it would. And he's kind of getting a little scared. And he's also realizing, as they get closer, what the impact of arriving is going to be. He's realizing that the Tokali and the Vahani really aren't that similar. And he's unsure of his feelings because he won't confront them. So what will he do in the wake of that? Well, he tells Latera a couple times that there can be nothing between them. Because, again, he's a liar. And he tries and he tries and he tries to suppress his feelings. So he just keeps saying we can't be friends. We can't be in a relationship. We can't be allies. And you know, I'm not gonna go all in on Elon, to be honest. Because while these books are they're not an autobiography. These books are inspired by feelings and experiences and the path that I've walked. But I've been both Elon and Latera. I haven't just been the victim. That would be insane for me to say that. And that's why when I first started writing, I published this quote that was like something along the lines of, like I built up this world and I built up these heroes and they're brave and they're proud and they're strong. And I allowed them to kind of adventure in this world. But then I ended it with then I built villains full of greed and hunger. And what if I see too through their eyes? What if I can do that? What if I can depict them because I can also see at times from their perspective? What if I've already been in their perspective and I know that I have? I know that sometimes with relationships, with different interactions, that you just can't see that you're sometimes the villain. And later you have to admit it, I think. I think that's what separates a true villain from a gray person, which is most people. Most people are gray. Most people are learning and getting better. You have about 1% of the population that's all black, and you have about 1% of the population that's all completely pure. That's an angel. You have devils and you have angels. On the 1%, you have Clovis, who's a monster. He's a demon. And on the other 1%, I don't really know. I don't know if I have other 1% in here. A saint. I'm trying to think. Maybe you could just say like the children. Children are really the only, up until a certain age, the only completely pure, innocent things up until they lose their innocence. And you have to be able to identify that you're in the middle. And you might be more towards the light than the darkness. You might be closer to the 70% of the scale, whatever that means, of the goodness scale. But I think in the end, if you can't acknowledge that you were on the dark side at times too, then you can't grow and you can't learn to not do that again. And so for them, while Elon is confused and while he is uncertain about the future and uncertain about what his feelings will mean if he acts on them, being empathetic is also important because I mean, again, it's not good of him. It's not good of him to get really close with someone and befriend them and then kind of turn his back. But it's part of growing. And Elon will either learn of what he did, accept the consequences, and move on and be better, or he won't. And he'll keep doing it. And he'll lose himself, just like the councilman, in a pit of lies. And I talk about that a lot. I talk about lies a lot because I've learned over time that finding truth was an important part of my journey in this series. And it's brought me to book 5. And it's why I can write book 5 and finish the series feeling good about the lessons that I'm taking from it and delivering on those lessons. And so again, Elon isn't a hero. Latera makes that perfectly clear. Elon isn't standing up for those who he should be or acted like he cared about. And it's not going to be good for him until he faces it. We'll see if he does. And then Latera's section ends with the mighty climb. This is one of my favorite scenes as well. And again, just a really quick to go back into figuring it out before I move on, actually. Conflict and dialogue. So this is something that, again, when it comes to me reaching chapter 7 and figuring out what works in writing and what doesn't, always trying to focus on including conflict and dialogue, because if there isn't conflict and dialogue, then there's no tension being built. There's almost just no point to reading. It's almost just like a history story. You're almost just, I mean, not a history story, but you're like painting without color almost. There's no tension, there's no pushback, there's no mountain to overcome. And so that's one of the things that I learned as I was going. And I think this chapter kind of was my introduction to that. I think in the beginning of this book in particular, there's a lot of good action. There's a lot of good story opening, world introduction, world building. But I think the dialogue and the interactions there and how people talk is something that I really just started to kind of grip onto in this chapter. And again, it's really cool to be able to go back and see that, both now in the podcast and with, like I said, going back and making tweaks. The progress from book 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 is just exponential, and it's really cool. Yeah, so then moving on to Latera's climb. So, like I mentioned in the episode, that climb was actually inspired directly by the Austin 360 overlook. I mentioned slipping and sliding, and there's some smoothness to those rocks. You can slip down every now and then. And Latera climbs all the way up to the top, looks out on the journey that's been behind her, the path that they walked from the north to the south, behind her, behind the hill, beyond the hill, and is just above it. She just rises above it all. And sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes when you're faced with conflict, when you don't understand why people are doing what they're doing, when you're instead of seeking vengeance, sometimes you just have to rise above and climb or run. Running is another thing that I did a lot of, I think, in my hardest points, because it kind of is a place where you can be invincible. It's a place where you don't have to face the difficulties and you could fight back. And for Laterra, again, it was rising above. The councilmen are below. Elon at that point is below. Everything that has faced her and everything that has caused her to leading to something that could make her view the world in a negative light is now below her. And she can see that there is still beauty in the world. Despite all that they do, despite all that they make her feel and all that they represent to her, there is still beauty out there. She can find it if she just keeps climbing. And for her, that climb is another metaphor, and it's like, it's just directly related to finding herself and being better and feeling like she's better than she was yesterday. Because when we see what we see in the beginning, this book represents a big transition for her. She starts out in the beginning a fearful young nurse who is closed off to the world and hasn't experienced much of anything and doesn't lead. She's just the daughter of a leader, and her brother is the one that's inevitably going to become the leader, and it just doesn't mean anything to her. She's worried about her own little world, and that's totally fine. If that's you, that's totally fine. For most people, that's a really good, that's not a bad thing to be. But for her, once she gets a taste, she realizes it can't be like that anymore. Not by any choice of her own. She has to move on. She has to grow, and she has to climb, and she has to overcome. And that's what she does. And it's a really uplifting section. I liked writing it a lot. And it's especially cool, again, because it's kind of inspired directly by my surroundings here. And Austin was, in a lot of ways, that for me. Both that specific lookout and the city in general. Climbing above and feeling like you've advanced, kind of. Like I said, like you're a better person today than you were tomorrow. And being inspired to do more and write a book. And then write another book. And then write 2 more. And then plan on writing a 5th one. But getting kind of stalled because, people break arms and have babies. Anyway, one more section in this chapter. And I will say that this one gets back to the action quite a bit. This one was also one of the funnest to record for the podcast because I had bear noises and horse noises and gunshots, and bringing all that together is a lot of fun. And the music too. The music is getting cool because with the music, I now have like 12 scores, 12 like songs, looped songs to play in the score, and they're all like directly tied to a different character or a different scene or a different place. So it's kind of, the mood is just almost automatically set, and it's pretty cool. But yeah, so with part 3, we are moving toward the mountain lands some more. Harrison crosses this not so sturdy bridge that the Bahani put together, and he realizes that the weight is not going to hold if Jeannie carries the horse and the trailer along, so Jeannie has to go with just Nala, which is Dominic's horse, while she's climbing across or walking across with the horse. Some birds fly up into the air and the scene gets pretty tense, and then gunshots go off, and we end up finding out that Colin McCormick has returned for Dominic. So there is a rivalry being formed between those two. Another interesting point is the fact that, again, it kind of goes back to the inspirations. We now have an illusionist with a rival. Like I've said, I think some of the biggest inspirations that I've had for this series have been probably The Prestige, Gangs of New York, Game of Thrones, and obviously Manifest Destiny America, because clearly there's a lot going on in that time and it's directly related to what this world is going through. Speaking of America, happy July 4th coming up, ladies and gentlemen, since I won't be having an hour discussion episode next week, but it will be chapter 8, Kettle and Wake. But yeah, so a big shootout happens on the bridge. Genie ends up getting across safe, but Nala unfortunately plunges into the river. No real horses died in the making of that chapter, but rest in peace, Nala. And Dominic ends up confronting Colin after Hansa takes out the other two guards with his bears. A big fight breaks out, and really just a bloody, angry rivalry has been formed between them. Where will it go from here? Who knows? But Colin gets away. Too many punches thrown. Too many injuries. Dominic can't do anything about it. Colin's having a good old time. Colin's a guy who was a member of the Keene gang, was pretty bored in Haran, and now he's starting to have some fun. He was a pretty laid-back guy, it seemed, until he realized the opportunity he had here, and he was embarrassed. And he doesn't like that he was embarrassed. Not one bit. But that brings us to the end of chapter 8. And today's going to be a little shorter episode. I'm not going to go for a full hour. I'm probably only going to go for another like 5 minutes or so. But before I go, I wanted to wish everyone a happy 4th of July and tell you to play the long game. And the reason why, again, to play the long game is because you need to believe that you're going to get where you're trying to go. And you also shouldn't think about where you're trying to go. You need to let the journey happen. But if you like doing something, then like doing it because you like doing it. Don't go for the accolades. And if you do want the accolades, then use that as your fire. But in the long run, it's going to be way harder. It's going to be way harder for you to be a platinum musician if you aren't just making music just to make music. And again, whenever someone says, you know, maybe you should stop, maybe this isn't for you, like, don't listen to them. They're wrong. And if someone says, like, this isn't what you put out isn't good enough, don't listen to them because they're wrong. If you like your art, other people will like your art. Maybe you have to refine it. Maybe it's going to take you some years to get it better, to get it to the point that you originally thought it was. Because sometimes you can't even see where it needs to improve. I didn't. But if you keep going and you don't stop and you don't ever stop, you can't stop, won't stop, then one day it'll come together in the form of a book as good as Cryptic Kingdom. One that just defines who you are and how you feel about things. And it comes full circle. And it ties together storylines that you never thought you would. It brings you to a place you never thought you'd be in. Not really, that you dreamed of it and you conceptualized it, but you never thought you'd actually get there, to the point where you earn the good place you are in the world. And you earn the happiness, and you earn the situation that you never dreamed possible, and you earn all of it because you worked and you didn't stop for years and years and years. And I'm not saying this because I'm finished doing it yet, but I'm saying it because I'm 3 years in now, 17, 18, 19, 3 years in to my writing journey. And when I was at the beginning, I read this article. I read this article when I first started writing from a website called Sunny Skies, which used to be my favorite. I used to send Sunny Skies articles to people because they just brightened my day. And it wasn't the greatest time ever for me, but before I first started writing. When I first started writing is when my life really started to kick off. And so I would share these articles, and one of them that I found was by some rapper guy, I don't remember his name, but he wrote an article a letter to himself 5 years ago. And he told, in the letter to himself 5 years ago, he said to keep pushing. And it was an inspiring letter, what he wrote. But the bottom line is that he gave it 5 years. I'm only 3 years in. I have 2 left. Who knows where it's going from here? But what I will tell you is that in 3 years, I can't believe how far this journey has taken me. In my life, in my pursuits, in everything. When you pursue the things you love relentlessly, you get to where you're trying to go. That's my promise to you, and I thank you as always for listening in. I'm Nicholas Austin. This has been Tuesday Night Fiction. I'm so happy we got to do this today instead of putting it off like a little bum. In 2 weeks' time, today is June 25th. In 2 weeks' time, I will have an update on the giveaway. 40 books I'm giving away. 40 books. 40. It's going to be in an Instagram post. It's going to be something that you could share. I'll have an update in 2 weeks. Maybe the giveaway I might post it in 2 weeks. We'll see how the process goes with my with my designer's wrist. Everyone pray for him, please. Pray for his wrist to get better so that this book comes out sooner than later and I can give away all the things I'm trying to give away, because I want you to have them. I've been working like crazy. Not, like I said, not just on book 4, but 1 and 2 and now 3. Book 1 and 2 are now on Amazon with everything corrected, everything as I thought it was originally. It should be as immaculate as humanly possible, and I'm so happy that that's the case. And for anyone that's already read, I apologize. I didn't realize, and I learned because I didn't stop. At 3 years in, I learned, but I didn't stop, and I won't stop. And I'm so happy that you're on this journey with me. And 2 years from now, I think this podcast is going to be wrapping up. And I think, you know what? Instead of doing, I just thought about this just now. My new thing is that in episode, what is it going to be? The last discussion episode of this podcast. This is my promise. The last discussion episode of this podcast is going to be my letter to myself 5 years in the past. The whole thing for a full hour, I'm going to talk to myself 5 years ago. Because the journey doesn't end. And I'll do another one in 10 years. Because I'm going to be still going at that point. And now I'm really excited because I just kind of thought about that in my head. Let's see where it takes us. Let's see where we get by episode 50 actually 100, because it's 50. There's 42 chapters right now. There's going to be at least 10 in the next one. So we'll at least have 52 chapters and 104 episodes because I can do math. And on episode 104 or 106, whatever it ends up being, I'm going to do a letter to myself in 5 years, and I hope you'll do it with me. At that time, I hope you're still with me, and I hope you'll do it with me because it's going to be epic. And there's going to be so much more that I've learned at that time. And I can't wait. But until then, I'm going to enjoy the ride. We're going to finish Cryptic Kingdom. We're going to finish all of it. We're going to get those books out to you guys. And then I'm going to start writing Crevice Colossus. Because goddamn does it feel good to be on book 5. And goddamn will it feel good to read book 4. Much love. Have a good night. Happy Tuesday.